So I think that question and its reverse, right? How does gender equity impact the House settlement is ultimately the $20.5 million question, right? I think
Okay.
that's something that everybody in the college athletic space is talking about. This
Oh,
new House settlement and the ability of, again, Division I institutions that have opted into this new structure, that ability to share up to $20.5 million annually with student athletes has the significant potential to exacerbate already existing gender disparities, gender inequities across an institution's athletics department, right? I think a lot of people are anticipating that the vast majority of those $20.5 million are going to go to male student athletes, primarily athletes on football and men's basketball rosters. Right? I don't think that is a particularly shocking thing to say. I think a lot of schools have either gone on record already to say this is how we plan to allocate our dollars, and a lot of financial and sports business analysts and journalists and reporters have predicted that that's how a good number of schools are going to divvy out those potential payouts. Right. And so I
mm,
think once you introduce direct and really substantial student athlete payments into the equation, there is a real argument to be made that schools might be discriminating against their student athletes, the female side, by providing a significant portion of that money to male student athletes. I think attorneys, right, plaintiffs' lawyers are certainly making that argument. We've already seen several appeals of the House settlement on Title IX grounds, arguing that at least the back pay damages of the settlement, right? There is a portion that will allow schools to pay student athletes moving forward. There is another key part of the settlement that provides a $2.8 billion pool of money for student athletes who competed over the last 8-ish years that, if not for NCAA rules prohibiting them from monetizing their name, image, and likeness, would have been able to receive these dollars going back several years, right? There is a formula. The parties to that lawsuit brought in an accountant, right, a sports business analyst, somebody who's way above my pay grade, to determine how those $2.8 billion will be paid out. And about 90% of that bucket of money is, in fact, allocated to male student athletes. You've got several groups of female student athletes who have raised their hands and said the backwards, right, the back damages portion of the settlement is inequitable on gender grounds, on Title IX grounds. And I would not be surprised if, looking at the forward looking, right, the prospective revenue sharing payments, if the same arguments aren't made on that front as well.
wow. Incredibly knowledgeable.
Thank
And
you.
I think that everyone watching this will feel that much more confident. When students face these issues of gender inequity, what is their first go-to step that you would recommend based on your experience?
I think the first place that student athletes should go if they have, right, an inkling or a perception, or they hear something weird that sounds like it might be entirely off base, is talk to your athletics administrators, right? Maybe that's your coach, maybe that's your sports supervisor, maybe it's your SWA, right, your senior woman administrator, maybe it's your SAC, your student athlete advisory committee president, right? Talk to somebody in a leadership position in your athletics department and see whether or not there are any teeth behind what you're experiencing, right? Sometimes we just have a perception issue. There's not an actual inequity or a disparity underlying it, but something just feels off. Sometimes there's what we call an LNJ, a legitimate, non-discriminatory justification for what you perceive to be a difference, right? For example, the chartering of private flights to transport football teams to away games, where the women's golf program, for example, is, riding in a bus or taking private cars to tournaments, right? That is a legitimate, it is a difference, it is an actual difference. It is not necessarily, though, a gender-based disparity, because we can explain it when we consider the logistics that are associated with transporting 120 student athletes, all of their gear and equipment, an entire coaching staff, right? And all of the support staff, student, trainers and all of the other human beings associated with a football program, right? Sometimes there are legitimate, non-discriminatory reasons for what you might perceive as a difference, and what you might think in your soul is a disparity might in fact just be a difference.
Are there any existing technologies that exist to help people who are managing these compliance matters to make it easier?
Yes, absolutely. Right. There are a lot of third party college athletics business vendors that have automated and have introduced AI and other, right, sort of technology assisted processes to deal with athletics compliance, right? Whether it's calculation of student athlete scholarships, right? That process can be automated because your scholarship numbers, though, athletics administrators are required to be disclosed to the federal government every year. I would really encourage that there is a human person who is double and triple checking those numbers before they're published annually on an EADA, right? An Equity and Athletics Disclosure Act submission, for example.